One thing's for sure, the real estate market is changing by the minute. It seems like every week I come out here with a new data point to tell y'all that things are getting very, very weird. I'm going to link down below a really great article about how there was 56,000 canceled contracts in just a few cities. And it was really a staggering number. I'd been tracking that cancellation of contracts were at about 20%. And, they've kind of hovered there for the last, month or so. But it's really starting to get hammered home, how the real estate market is changing. Check out this water here. This is right by the fish house, right here in downtown Pensacola. See, buyers are backing out of contracts at an alarming rate. It's like very quickly switch to a buyer's market. They're finding out that once they get under contract and the inspection reports come back, that the cost of ownership on a lot of these houses is going to be a lot higher than they thought. And then you factor that in with the affordability to where all of a sudden, hey, insurance is double what I thought it was going to be if that hot water heater doesn't get fixed in 30 days, or that roof is going to have to be replaced in 5 years or less than 5 years. And oh, by the way, the insurance company just sent me a letter and said they're not going to bind it. There's all these issues out there now that are throwing red flags into deals. When you think that it takes $110,000 a year just to afford the average home price of like $450,000, that's wild. And we've reached the level of home affordability, I think like 30%, 36% of the income of somebody that they make is just to afford the mortgage and some of the minor costs that go along with it. Hey, check out my little squirrel friends right here. See them? They don't even run away. It kind of scares me. Every year my taxes go up. Even though I have homestead exemption here, they raise it to the max every year. And it's just like, oh, your taxes just went up again. Every year they go up again. Give a politician the ability to raise taxes and not try to balance the budget, and you will always get a tax increase. Really notice the time on market has constantly gone up. We're like, I think, average 32 days on market. And if you look at like a place like Navy Point, where you've got 14 listings, all within a small radius, and they all been on the market 30, 40 days. But one thing the sellers have to start to realize is we're in a totally different market with a totally different set of rules. And unless the Fed does something, which they play with our markets continuously. I've made video after video after video about the Fed and its power. And if they decide to do a miraculous 1% cut, 0.75% cut, or really start to tick them down fast, like when they raised them, we can see home prices do some really weird things. They could go back up. Or if they hold strong, they can go back down. We could see a major correction. And every month it's changing. Like when we saw the market have its quick drawback last week before last, you could see the Fed started to balk. They've used all their arrows in their quiver on trying to solve this entire housing market / stock market situation. And I think they're ready to panic. And when we say correction, what is a correction? We have to define that. 15%, 20%. If we saw anything more than that, politicians are going to panic and they're going to try to fix it. And how do they do that? By lowering interest rates, convincing the Fed to lower interest rates, which don't tell me they're not political. They're appointed, they get removed out, they get pressured. There's many ways for the pressure to be put on these guys. And don't tell me it's not political. We're going into an election environment. And the reigning party does not want to go into an election environment with a down stock market. What does that tell me? That they're going to do everything they can to soften the blow of the market correcting, going into some type of negative environment. And they don't want to hear from homeowners that their houses are not worth what they once worth. And so we're going to see them do some very odd things. You're going to have to stay on top of this every month to figure out what's going on. Just to add more injury to this is the condo problem that's going on. If you've been tracking here in Florida, we have that SIR study, the structural integrity study, where they're going to have to assess these buildings and figure out how much they're going to have to allocate to a fund to pay for future repairs. And some of the stuff that happened was criminal. Think about it. They basically kicked the can down the road. And let's say you were the condo association president. You said, well, I might sell in the next year or two. We're not going to do that assessment. We're we're going to wait until after we sell this thing. So they kicked the can, and then now all of a sudden the state of Florida says you're not going to do that no more. And you're going to have to assess these people. People are getting hundreds of thousands of dollars in assessments. So like, let's say you cure those assessments, or we haven't assessed them yet, or we don't see like it's needed at this moment. You could wind up going under contract for a condo. Next year you close, you've moved in, and then all of a sudden, whammo, another assessment. Like, they could come out of nowhere. They could come next week, they could come next year. There could be all kinds of problems to the point where nobody wants to take on that type of risk of buying a condo. And if you look in Miami, I think like 70% of the condos in Miami are over 30 years old. They're all going to be assessed like this, or they're going to be assessed next year or wherever, or they're going to get assessed just very soon. And you're going to have a major problem. And that could drag down the market. And throw commercial on top of it. I know a lot of people don't want to say, oh, commercial and residential, they're not the same. Well, when somebody owns 1,000 of them, it is. And if they're all in the same portfolio, or the bank that holds the notes for all of them and is holding a bunch of commercial notes, and those go belly up, which I've talked to on another video, that can be a real problem. You know, all of a sudden, you've got a banking problem. Wake up, Bank of America or Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan just got caught with their hand in the cookie jar like Lehman Brothers or Bear Stearns or the ones in 2008. That's like setting the field for a really bad situation. I think that this whole condo crisis is going to extend into other states because, one, insurance companies are going to push it. Legislatures are going to push it, and we could wind up seeing California do the same thing, Florida, anywhere that's close to the Gulf Coast or to the Atlantic Ocean, South Carolina, Georgia, all the way up the coast and all the way down to Texas, all the way to anywhere that touches the water. Because a lot of these codes have changed so much from the time they were built that all of a sudden, when you reassess them now to come up to these codes, some of these structures were just not built for it. They're just not going to be able to do it. And we're going to have real problems. It's going to ask a real question on whether they should just be knocked down and built again. In Florida, we already had a monstrous insurance problem. It's going up by the mine went up 30% this year. Okay, and I'm sure y'all's went up just as crazy. And Debbie just threw another stone in the stone basket because it flooded Sarasota in places that nobody had ever been flooded before. And you know that it's just going to add one more thing to insurance companies saying, you know what, we're going to raise your premiums again, or we're just not going to allow any type of coverage in that area. Or flood insurance is going to be mandatory no matter what. And it's just like, well, I think we're like one big hurricane away from some major problems in the housing market. It is just, here in Florida at least, just because, you know, nobody wants to insure these houses. The houses are older, but some of them have been here through every storm and not had a problem. And those are the ones that are hard to get insurance on. And then you have the whole idea of new construction. New construction that's built like a pile of toothpicks, and they'll give you a good insurance policy on that. And I just don't understand it. And I just think the whole industry needs to be restructured. The politicians want to have their hand in everything, but they don't want to fix the things that really need to be fixed. And if you're going to mess with the market, well, you need to fix it, not just make one more thing that makes the market even worse. And I feel like that's what the NAR settlement was about. DOJ tried to fix some things that they don't know about, and they created a really big problem. And now people are going to be underrepresented and buying houses and create its own problem. I just saw somebody go unrepresented, try to sell them they tried to sell their house themselves, wound up going under contract with a wholesaler that was actually a scam artist, did a video on that. And now their property's tied up for the next like 5 or 6 months while they go through a quiet title action. So by not wanting to pay for an agent that could have spotted that problem, not saying all of them will spot it, but some of them would, now they're having to pay for, you know, quiet title action, $5,000 or $6,000. So, you know, pick your poison. And they wound up almost getting these problems that can just cascade. And when, you know, go watch that video. I kind of explained it a little more in depth, but it's hard to explain it on every video. Like I was saying, that we just have this perfect scenario for some quick correction in the market. You got the NAR settlement that came up. Those of you who haven't tracked the NAR settlement, where they've been telling agents they have to do things a little different than they've been doing. And it's created a situation where some of these buyer's agents have no idea what's going on. With real estate agents, you have some that are on top of their game and they're really good at this stuff. And you got some that don't pay attention to anything. And those ones meet. When those ones that don't pay attention to anything meet the ones that pay attention to everything in a transaction, and those ones that don't pay attention to anything have to actually play by the rules now, they don't know what to do. And I would say the ones that don't know what to do are like probably 90% of the agents out there, and they are in a situation where they don't know how to show a house anymore. They have to go and get their buyer's agent agreement signed. Somebody has to agree they're worth that value, and then they have to go and go into the house. Well, a lot of them are having a lot of hard times with that. And, you know, it's sad that they didn't prepare themselves, but here we are, August 17th almost, and they're like, how do I sell this house? I thought that was a snake right there. Which all this sets the stage for deals to just collapse, okay? They just don't get through. Those sellers, those agents that don't know what they're doing, they don't know how to keep a deal alive, they don't know how to do the proper paperwork, the inspection reports are awful, and the insurance comes back crazy. Because one thing about being an agent is you've got to have a network to get deals across the finish line, as in solve problems, whether it's the right attorney, or it's the right home inspector, or it's the right, you know, insurance agent, it's the right handyman, it's the right guy to just solve some problems. And you know, there's just so many reasons why these deals are collapsing. And I think a lot of it is just the expense. When people see it on paper that not only are they going to be paying, you know, $1,200 a month, their insurance is going to be, you know, $5,000–6,000 a year, which is more than they thought it was going to be. And oh, by the way, there's going to be these future costs coming up. They're like, you know what, I'll just go rent. I'm going to link below the article of Redfin article about this, talking about how many cancellations of contracts there are. And it's an increasing thing we're seeing in the market now. The time on market is crazy. Sellers not listening to price cuts. And then when you get into the transaction and you show the seller, hey, there's all these issues, need you to help us out on the deal, and they're like, no, I still think I should get $1 million for this little 2-1, and the people are like, you know what, I'm out of here, it wasn't a good deal to begin with. But comment down below your thoughts on all this. Tell me what you think. Do you think home affordability is crazy? Do you think buyers have all the leverage now? Do you think that maybe we're in for a big correction, or maybe the state needs to step in and fix all these problems with NAR, or just break them up? I'd prefer them to break them up. They shouldn't be able to tell every agent in the country how they can do a transaction in a state way far away. You know, how can you sit in Kansas and tell me how to do a deal in Florida? And that's my opinion on that. I'll see you guys later. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and tomorrow I'll be back for another video.